So I'm certain this is not going to be a popular video, nor a video that's clicked on much or probably well received, but it's a lesson that I've learned over the last 3 years throughout my transition of turning my love for landscape photography into a full-time career. And to be 100% honest with you, I often stray away from creating videos that I think won't be interesting for the majority of you, no matter how much I want to make them or how important they are to myself. But this is something that I would have found, I guess, great value in 3 years ago when my journey into turning what I love doing into a full time career began. And hopefully, anyone else out there that is preparing for, or I should say, contemplating the same type of venture will find value in this as well. Because at the end of the day, I always strive to create videos that I would find value in, as my hope is that if it would help me, then there's a pretty solid chance that it could help others as well. So, when I graduated college and got my first job in the corporate world, which ended up being my only job in the corporate world as I was employed there for 17 years, I could not have been more excited. I ended up landing a job right out of college with full benefits: 401k, health, vision, dental insurance, a spacious cubicle that if I leaned in just the right direction, I could achieve visual access to the window overlooking a beautifully groomed parking lot. Life was good. I was young with very little responsibilities at all, other than just feeding myself, paying my bills, and trying to advance up the corporate ladder and make as much money as I possibly could. And that's exactly what I did. I had complete and total tunnel vision for probably the first decade that I was there. The goal every single year was to make more money than the previous year, and most of the time that objective was achieved. But over the years, the lust for money as a benchmark of success, it began to diminish. Time began to tick by faster and faster with each passing year. I met my wife, I fell in love, I got married, I had kids, but the annual goal always remained the same: make more than you did last year, Mark. And in July of 2018, when my time in the corporate world came to an end, this is the moment when a huge chapter of my life would close and I would begin to write yet another. And the fear during this time of transition, it was suffocating. The excitement was invigorating, and the unknown had me feeling more alive than I felt in years. And I spent the remainder of 2018 and the majority of 2019 really stumbling along, trying to create my own path, my own business that would provide for a family of four, while at the same time doing what I love to do: take photos of the world. And these months were filled with a few wins and numerous losses, along with the consistently rising level of self-doubt. And you often hear folks talk about the big break moment, the one singular event that propelled something someone's been working so diligently towards. Well, for me, I can't really pinpoint this big break moment, and maybe it's because this hasn't even occurred, or maybe it won't even occur for me. But there was a time towards the end of 2019 when all the hours of work, the almost year's worth of 7-day work weeks, felt as if they were starting to pay off. The number of losses I was experiencing was down, wins were increasing at a steady pace, my confidence was on the rise, and the outlook for the future was finally starting to look up. Now, my remaining few years in the corporate world felt very robotic, uncertain and stale, honestly. Huge corporate restructurings and layoffs seemed to be the norm, and the frequency of such events seemed to be increasing as well. And I can recall this constant level of anxiety as my number could be called at any moment, which created an awful work environment which spilled over into all facets of my life, both professionally and personally. And this heightened level of uncertainty is what really propelled me to begin formulating some type of an exit strategy in the event that my number was in fact called and I'd be let go. See, when I was younger and growing up through, I guess, grade school, I often heard the following saying: if you do what you love, you'll never have to work a day in your life. If you do what you love, you'll never have to work a day in your life. And that saying has always stuck with me. But in all honesty, it felt more like, I guess, a fairy tale, or something that only happens to a select few, or a destiny that's only experienced in movies. And it certainly wasn't something that had occurred for me. And it's not that I disliked my corporate job, rather it's just the opposite. I actually enjoyed it for the majority of the duration I spent there. but it wasn't something that I loved to do. Actually, one of my favorite aspects of my previous career was the work-life balance that it provided, which has always been extremely important to me. And I guess one of the most powerful and impactful articles I've ever read in my entire life was written by a woman who spent her entire working career as a nurse in a hospice center. She spent a great deal of time during the final few hours of many of her patients' lives, talking with them in an effort to comfort them and ensure that they didn't feel alone in their final moments in this world. And inevitably, one of the most common topics that was discussed was reminiscing on one's life and the things they wish they had done differently. And by far the most frequent regret was spending too much time working and not enough time living. And honestly, I found that realization to be extremely heartbreaking, and I vowed that I would always strive for balance in my life and not spend the majority of my time here working and just paying bills. So towards the end of 2019, when things appeared to be looking up for me, the feeling of excitement and the feeling of momentum, it was intoxicating. Seeing something that I've worked so hard towards creating and establishing for myself was a feeling that I have never experienced before. Well, not to this exact level. This YouTube channel really started to grow. Folks began to order prints and sign up for my monthly newsletter, into one-to-one workshops, and I started to get offers to teach at much larger workshops as well. You know, life was good, life was great, and the best part of it all was that the momentum that I was experiencing not only continued, but also began to pick up steam with each and every passing month. And I had mentioned earlier that one of my favorite aspects of my corporate job was the work-life balance that it provided. When Fridays at 5 p.m., actually when Fridays at 2 or 3 p.m. arrived, my weekend began. And I didn't think about work for one single instant throughout my entire weekend. I spent my weekends living, relaxing, spending time with family and friends, and most importantly, not working. I lived for the weekends. The Mondays through the Fridays, they weren't anything to get excited about, but the weekends, that was where it was at. And it eventually got to the point that I started to ponder if this kind of living for the weekends philosophy was actually cutting my life short, as I was only enjoying 2 days out of a 7-day week. Or I guess stated a little bit differently, out of 365 days in a year, I was only looking forward to or enjoying 104 of them, or roughly 28% of the year. And this takes me back to the statement, do what you love and you never have to work a day in your life. Do what you love and enjoy 100% of your life rather than just 28% of it on the weekends. Well, at least that was my most recent interpretation of it. So when my transition from the corporate world to the world of professional photography began, this was perhaps one of the things that I was most excited about. The fact that I would never have to work again for the rest of my life, as I was doing what I loved, right? Well, after being on both sides of the proverbial coin here, I'm not so sure I believe in that statement any longer, and here's why. Ever since photography became my career, I've loved it, and I continue to love it. I love it so much that I never stop thinking about it. I never stop thinking about how I can improve as a photographer, how I can help and inspire others through photography, how I can make better videos, how I can create a better photography-focused website, how I can become better as a workshop leader. And the list just goes on, and it never, ever stops. In my previous corporate life, the work stopped on Fridays, and it didn't start again until Mondays. But in my new role, the work never ends. In full disclosure, the last 3 years has been a bit overwhelming at times. Always being on, so to speak, never truly having time off when I'm not thinking about something photography related. Now, I wouldn't change it for anything in the world, and hands down find it more fulfilling than what I used to do. I've recently discovered a newfound enjoyment in helping others through photography that I never knew existed 3 years ago within myself. But to say, do what you love and you never have to work a day in your life, in my opinion, that couldn't be further from the truth in my own personal experience. And I know it's just an expression, and it isn't meant to be taken literally. But nevertheless, I feel that I've never worked as hard as I have the last 3 years. And after being on both sides of this discussion, I've come to the conclusion that there isn't a perfect utopia. There's good and bad aspects with everything, and nothing is nor will ever be perfect. There's always something you wish was different, regardless what your particular scenario might be. And the saying that the grass is always greener on the other side, well, I think that speaks volumes. So to put a bow on this and kind of wrap it all up, what I've learned throughout all of this is something I already knew in the very beginning. But it took me being on both sides of this equation in order to fully understand it. Balance. It's all about balance. Regardless what you do as a career, you've got to find balance. And some folks are better at this than others. And from my experience, if you do what you love, then this balance is even more difficult to achieve, as it's easy to become obsessed doing what you love. And this doesn't only pertain to photography. This could impact you if you're a professional painter or a sculptor, or maybe you're a stockbroker or you own a restaurant. Nevertheless, if you do what you love, it could be difficult to divert your attention or your thoughts away from your job, so to speak. And moving forward, I'm going to make a concerted effort to try and carve out some time within my work week and my weekends to create space for living in order to better enjoy my downtime. Now, if you're still with me at this point, I just want to thank you. And I know you're more than likely wondering why on earth I would make such a video. And the reason is simple. As I mentioned at the beginning, this is something that I would have found a lot of value in 3 years ago. And if it's something that would have helped me, then hopefully it could be something that will help others as well. So thanks so much for tuning into this week. I really do appreciate it. It means a lot to me. And I absolutely promise you that the regularly scheduled programming will resume next Wednesday. See you then.